Good morning, Luge friends, Luge family, and Luge fans tuning in live around the world. It's the 48th season on the EBERSPA FIL World Cup, and we're in Oberhof, Germany, the Lotto Thuringian Ice Arena for stop number 7 on this year's tour, as we get set for one final busy weekend of competition leading up to the World Championships coming up in 2 weeks in Whistler, Canada. Hi again, everyone. I'm Tim Singer. Welcome to Oberhof. Today we have 3 races in store for you. We'll start things off with the women's doubles competition. Then a little later on, we've got women's singles, and we'll conclude day 1 of action with the men's doubles. Then tomorrow we reset. They move it up to the top for the men's singles competition, and the weekend will conclude. The final race before the World Championships will be the 2nd edition this season of mixed singles and mixed doubles. So we've got a lot for you. We're going to take a tour from top to bottom of this track in just a moment. We'll check out the athletes warming up. But right now I'm pleased to introduce for the commentary for race number 1, from Team USA, Johnny Gustafson. Johnny, welcome to the microphone.
Hey, Tim. Happy to be back on the microphone.
Great to have you. So, you've been here all week. It's your 2nd full week of activity so far this season in Oberhof. This is the only stop, actually, we're going to twice. What's the vibe around the track this week?
I think there's a lot more confidence this week. Everyone having that race in the first half of the season before Christmas, kind of solidifying the lines that they already knew. And even though it was almost 2 months ago at this point, a month and a half ago, it's still pretty fresh in our minds. So everyone knows kind of how to drive this track at this point.
Well, here's a look at the athletes warming up here. That's the longtime coach, Willy Huber of Italy. The Italians have 2 teams on hand today. There's Diana Eiteberger, Diana of Germany, an Olympic medalist in singles, if you haven't been following. Americans, you've got a 2nd team on hand for the 2nd half of the season, Johnny, with Maya with a new partner, Jessica. But how about what the Austrians have done so far this year in women's doubles? Amazing, right?
Yeah, I mean, they have been absolutely dominant with their doubles team here. It seems every race they are just the ones to catch. They gain so much speed at the bottom. Their start is pretty decently fast. They kind of have it all going for them right now. So they're definitely going to be the sled to watch in this race as well, and I feel like kind of the sled that everyone is chasing.
One of your forerunners in the sport of doubles luge, an American by the name of Dan Joy, used to say about this Oberhof track, it's one of those tracks where you may not be going that fast, but you certainly feel like you're going fast. Is that the sensation you get?
I would say that's pretty close to accurate. This track is definitely, it's a luge track, kind of hands down. The curves are all pretty tight together. There's not a lot of long straightaways, and they're big sweeping curves that kind of throw you back and forth. And even the smaller ones, you have to get kind of perfect and get those really good lines that throw you into the next curve. As soon as you're a little offline here, it feels much worse than it looks on camera, but you can tell how much time you're losing, how much speed you're losing, and so you really need to get this perfect.
World Cup standings, the aforementioned Austrians, Egla and Kipp, they lead in a big way. They've won the last 5 races in a row, ahead of Jessica and Cheyenne Degenhardt Rosenthal of Germany, perennial bridesmaids. In 5 of the 6 races they finished 2nd. They're still looking for their first victory. But that woman right there, Sophia Kirkby, and the USA with her partner Siobhan Forgan, they have the other race win this season. They're in 3rd place in the World Cup standings. So the Latvians have been good. How are you seeing it this week? Will the Germans finally break through? Will your American teammates have win number 2? Or will this woman and her partner continue their domination?
I think it's going to be a little difficult to tell this week. We started off the week with the weather was a little bit colder. It was pretty sunny out. It was very much the opposite of what we know as typical Oberhof, which we're kind of back to on this race day. You can see it's a little bit overcast. It's a little bit warmer. It was a little bit of rain this morning. And so the ice conditions have been changing day to day. The ice getting a little bit slower, a little bit softer, a little bit warmer. And so the sled setup changed. How everyone's driving the track is going to change ever so slightly as well. So I think even though we had those couple days of training, the conditions being as different as they are, there is a good chance for those who haven't been on the podium to kind of break through today.
Yeah, that'll be fun to see. There's a great evidence of what you just talked about, Johnny, with that little puddle down there on the left. So let's take a closer look at this track in Oberhof. It was built many years ago. It has hosted 3 world championships. And as you see from the double start, the lower start here, it's about 806 meters, the 11 corners, the key feature being down below, a couple real tough turns. The curve 9, I guess it is, and then the finishing Kreisel. It's actually the 13-14 transition. But this is just a graphic, Johnny. In a second, we're going to let you give us a tour from the double start on down.
I'll be happy to do it. This track is kind of like I mentioned earlier, it is going to be difficult. So they're going into this start curve a little bit slower, and it's a little flatter here than you would expect. So all these upper curves, getting them just to the point perfect, it's going to help you gain speed at the bottom. Kind of going into this big curve 8 right here, this sets up this important part of the track, this 9 into 10 into 11 transition. Right here is where we're going to see the sleds kind of make or break it. Coming into this big swooping curve 12 here, going early into curve 13 is going to be very important to get out into this straightaway where you really have to push position. This is the last spot to just make sure you're really getting that speed going into this Kreisel and then across the finish line right there.
Right, and we're going to flash up those track records and start records in a little bit. I'm not sure if the conditions are conducive to breaking the track record, which was actually set on a much cooler day 4 weeks ago. But we'll flash that up in a second. First, the weather specs, as Johnny just alluded to, a little bit above freezing, as you see the clouds there, and a little bit of wind. The ice maintaining at below freezing, so that's good. That was certainly an issue at many stops around Germany last year with the very warm temperatures, but the weather's been somewhat favorable most of this season. So the track record, Egla and Kip in their victory in Oberhof on December 14th, 42.382. Then the Italians, Andy and Marian, same day, they had the start record. Either of those going to fall today, Johnny?
I think that track record is going to be a little bit difficult today to take down. The start record as well, since the start it goes through that opening curve, curve 4, the ice being a little bit slower that I think it's going to be today does factor into the start time. However, with the slower ice, it does make it a little bit easier to dig in with the paddles and kind of pull through, get yourself a little bit faster. So I think there's a chance for the start, but even that is kind of a hope.
That'll be interesting to see. 13, as you see in today's field of athletes, we've had as few as 10, but as many as 16 in women's doubles so far in the World Cup. I suspect we'll be at the higher end of that when we head over to Whistler in a couple of weeks. So we're about a minute and a half away from the start of the competition. Johnny, when do all of the teams head over to Western Canada, or do you get a chance to stop at home in New York State first?
I don't think there's going to be a chance for us to stop at home. I know for us, we're going to leave on Tuesday, get there Tuesday. I'm sure a lot of the Europeans who are close are going to get to go home for a day or two, kind of reset before the last kind of long slog of the season. But for a lot of these European teams, after 2 weeks in Whistler and then 2 weeks in Asia, they're going to be away from home for a lot longer than they're used to.
I know, but still only less than half as long as all of you have been away.
Yeah,
crazy,
I think,
right?
The United States, Canada, even Latvia, we have a little bit of advantages. We're used to being away from home for longer.
Okay, we're getting set for our first of the teams. 3 from Germany in today's race, 2 from the United States, 2 from Italy, 2 from Latvia. So together those 3 nations make up better than half of the field, but everyone's chasing Austria. Here are Alicia Strauch, Paulina Potts, a young German team. They finished on top of the podium last year at the Junior European Championships. Both 20 years old, from right here in the Thuringian region of Germany.
Yeah, we know from all disciplines how deep the German program is, so it's nice to see that they have 3 teams. They have a younger team coming up who are always going to be challenging and pushing the older athletes. So I think it's good to start out with German too. We're probably going to see decent lines, decent times. They have a lot of training on all these German tracks. You can see that evident right away in these first couple corners. Sliding good lines, getting that nice and early entrance to 8 sets you up into this nice 9, 10. A little later into 10, but no problems here.
2 runs combined time. That's how it works on the World Cup. In fact, that's how it'll be in the World Championships. A little bit of a challenge. We're going to see that all day long between 13 and 14.
Yeah, that little push off of 13 definitely gets people. And that's actually closer to that track record than I thought it was going to be right away. I mean, a pretty decent run from short taps besides that little hit there they had out of 13. I think you got to be happy with that run.
Only 14/100ths of a second off of the track record as they slide up the outrun just by our commentator cabin. So Lisa Starch, Paulina Patz of Germany, the other 2 former World Championship podium finishers from Germany still to come.
And overall, a good run from them, though. You can see her peaking a little bit, having the head up and coming a little bit up on the end of that curve 13, which kind of pushed her over to that right side coming out of the curve, and sliders right.
And a welcome to all of our viewers who have tuned in to live streaming on the YouTube channel. Thanks for weighing in. Got a W player, not sure coming from where, saying good morning to everyone. We've got the Damovich family from Poland. We'll be seeing them in a little bit. I'm sure we might be seeing some of the Gustafson family from Messina, New York, tuned in. But here's our next competitor from Ukraine, Elena Shtechke, Alexander Molk. Johnny, as you know, Alina has done singles and doubles throughout much of the last couple of seasons, but we haven't seen her in singles in the last few weeks, perhaps now trying to customize her specialty.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's what she's going for, but definitely a good idea here. I mean, with the Olympics coming up next year, really picking which sport you want to commit your full time to is, I think, a good idea.
Fewer spots available for a lot of athletes this coming Olympics than in the past.
Yeah, spots are definitely going down a little bit. That's a little bit of a slower speed. We saw it going a little sideways in the curve 12, definitely cutting some time, and you can tell that 6/10 back are not too happy with that one.
43.168 puts them well in back of the leading Germans in the early going, over a half second behind. So Stetschke and Mock through. The place where the spectators will be filling in over the next few hours. They love their luge here in Thuringia.
Yeah, this is one of the best tracks for spectators and for us athletes seeing everybody here, and they always slowly trickle in throughout the day. You can see not too many at the finish right now, but they're all on the track watching, and they slowly work their way down throughout the day. Oh, and getting control for Stetschke as well right at the end there.
On the topic of singles athletes, switching over to doubles, you're looking at the face of Raluca Stramaturaro, a 4-time Olympian and twice in the top 10 in the Olympics in women's singles. Raluca with her teammate Mihaela Carmen Manolescu, Team Romania, 39 years old and 26 years old respectively.
Yeah, these two have been putting in the work for doubles, and for Raluca, I really want to see her start to really push that head back a little bit. She's known a little bit for looking more than you'd like down the track, and hopefully here she can really start to push back more and more.
Yeah, we've been talking about this since week number 1. How Raluca, and I'm looking forward to chatting with her in Whistler, she just chooses to keep the head up, which many people would say is taboo in this sport.
Yeah, I mean, this sport is all about aerodynamics. There is something for having one position and holding it the whole time rather than constantly going up and down, but that is still going to be slower than just having your head down.
Right, that's a great point. To the finish, third place right now. The Romanians have really struggled to find the speed in all of the disciplines this year. I know Valentin Cretu is frustrated as he usually is. He maintains a great attitude, but every week is some sort of exploration to try to find a little bit of speed.
Yeah, and I mean, that's kind of the goal this season, right? With next year being the Olympics, everyone just trying something else, figuring things out. And sometimes it doesn't always go forward. Sometimes it's a step back. So we know the Romanians are probably one of those teams as well. They're just trying different things, trying to figure out what's working for them.
The next of the Germans coming up now, Diana Eitberger, has had a little slower start than she had with her former doubles teammate. So she, with her new teammate, Lena Machina, they're finally showing some results over the last couple of weeks, including a season's best fourth-place finish in Winterberg, Germany. They finished 7th on this track, Diana's home track, at the last race in Oberhof.
Yeah, I'm sure the top 4 is a good start, but I know they're both not going to be, shooting for 4. They're shooting for, at the very least, a medal, and then beyond that, they're also chasing Egel Kip as well. She's had a little bit, they both had a little bit of a slower start to the season, but that doesn't mean they're out of the count for sure. They're always looking at that medal spot.
And they're looking at green right now, midway down this run, as the clock stops right here with a 1300ths advantage over their younger teammates.
That was pretty decent so far. That little tap out of there. You can tell she's got that 13th head and then stayed right there, going late into that curve 12, a few curves back, and then coming out of 13. And I am eating my words, the track record.
There's her track record, 42.350. The Diana, who grew up not too far from here. She actually trained and learned the sport on a nearby track, a fun little track in the little village of Ilmenau. And now she's a track record holder on her home track in Oberhof.
Yeah, you can tell for the most part of that run, she was sliding like it was her home track, just really letting everything go here and there. But just these little touches going down the track, I think we're probably going to see that track record fall as well.
Germans into the lead. Poland getting ready at the top. Nikola Domovic and Dominika Pibgowska. 22 and 21 years old for this pair. The results haven't been sensational, but they've been consistent. And they're one of the small group of athletes who've shown up every week, competed, made their way into the World Cup, get 2 runs. They've had 2 top 10s. Both of those were in the first 2 events of the year, including a 7th place in Lillehammer. That's the fun thing, Johnny, about Lillehammer. When you don't have a race in Germany, Latvia, the USA, or Austria, there is no home advantage. And when we head to Canada, I mean, obviously the Canadians have the literal home advantage, but it's going to be much more wide open, isn't it?
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with that. And you're right, Norway is a great spot that kind of shows that. Everyone there, it's a little bit more even. We can see, these Polish girls have been sliding well, and attest that Norway at that 7th place finish here. Pretty decent run out of them, but you can tell they're just not as comfortable on this track as Eitberger and Machina. Just a little bit on and off curves, a little hit there across the finish line. But you can tell just a little bit on and off curves. They're just not flowing with the track. They're not letting the sled run a little bit.
One sign of a team that's sometimes smaller than the others is you see a teammate down there in that coach's celebratory box as opposed to an actual coach or trainer. And that was Maciej Sokovic cheering on the young Polish doubles team.
I always love when the other athletes are on there, really cheering on your teammates and showing them the support they need.
Yeah, Sandra Robacher is a fixture down there. It'll be interesting to see if she's cheering on when we get to the 2 Italian teams coming up back-to-back in a moment. Right after this next team, the first of 2 from the USA. Maya Chan, Sophia Gordon. Maya, a veteran since the beginning of World Cup women's doubles several seasons ago, but teaming up this year with Sophia Gordon.
Yeah, it's been good to see this new team, and it's been impressive seeing how well Sophia's adapted. This is her first year doing doubles, and trying to figure out that new way of sliding, I'm sure, is a challenge. And so it's been good to see them really on the ice sliding well.
Right. As for Sophie, she's a 2-time junior national champion for the United States in singles. Also had I believe it was just 1 World Cup appearance last year in Whistler in singles.
I believe you're right there. And then doing this full switch over to doubles, little bit of rough transitions in there. The lines were pretty decent, but when you're swinging over from curve to curve, you really, and especially in that 9, 10, 11 transition, you really got to flow a little bit better. Good position push by Maya there. You could see them correcting a little bit down that straightaway, but it was good on them to stay off the walls.
Skidding their way throughout most of the bottom few curves, but putting down a 3rd place time for the moment, 42.921, 1/2 second behind Eitberger and Lena Machina, who continue to lead the way midway through run number 1.
You can tell here just that little bit of being thrown around on those curves right there, not really taking control and letting the sled float. They still did a good job of minimizing all these small mistakes, but you can tell they're probably mostly happy with that run, but they know they have more time.
Sophie sporting the glitter, very much a fixture among many of the American athletes. Now the first of 2 in a row from Team Italy, both from the town of Bruneck in Südtirol. This is Nadia Falkensteiner and Annalena Huber.
I think what we really need to see from some of these athletes to challenge that Eitberger and Machina track record is a little bit of a faster start. You can see a lot of the athletes see already 2/10, almost 2/10 back just after one curve. It's near impossible to make that up.
Right. Their teammates coming up next, Vetter and Oberhofer, could certainly challenge at the start.
Oh, for sure. And those with a good start and then having that decent run. Again, like I said, I think we can see another track record here today.
Great sounds of the sled, as always. The transition done really well, or at least it was for a moment, Johnny.
Yeah, it's so hard on that entrance to Kreisel. You have to be a little rough there across the finish line. You have to be as early as you can possibly be to that Kreisel. And some people, when you bring it over, if you bring it over a little too early, it's just going to knock you away too soon. So it's kind of a pinpoint accurate you have to get in there.
As you see, they don't even make it all the way up the outrun.
You can tell their paddles are a little bit off sync on those first couple there. For the doubles teams, getting in sync is the most important part on that start, and just being that little bit off is going to cost you time. We've been seeing a few sleds hitting across the finish line here, and they do need to take into account for tomorrow. There is the mixed event where you have to hit that pad decently far up that straightaway after the finish.
That's exactly right. We had a little bit of adventure in the team relay last time we were here. Now, everyone in this race is, literally speaking, part of the seeded group. But now, Johnny, we really do move into the contenders here. Certainly the leaders, Eitberger and Machina, are among them. But all of the rest of the teams could challenge. And as we see, a start record to begin things for Andrea Vetter and Marion Oberhofer, coming off of their first podium of the season last week in Winterberg.
Yeah, I'm sure that podium kind of relit that fire into them. They were chasing the podium for most of the season. Now that they have one, they just want another and another. And I mean, you can tell they're sliding well, beating their own start record by a few hundredths, and now almost 2/10 ahead.
Getting it back together. These are the 2-time defending World Cup overall champions. Any first place time will be a track record. And Armin Zugler, the FIL Hall of Famer, shows his approval down at the bottom. And Andrea, it's nice to see that smile back on her face, because Johnny, she's been coming up the outrun the first half of the season, shaking her head.
Yeah, and I think that's a good run to smile about. You can tell she's really pushing back and getting all the speed she can out of this last, second to last curve, 13. Got nice and early into Kreisel. You can tell a little bit of a loop here, nothing too crazy, but really fighting to get off that last curve.
And they get the green light, which means the double thumbs up from Andrea Vetter. Team Italy out in front. Now the first of 2 from Latvia. Both Latvians have been on the podium this year, as in both Latvian doubles teams. And this one's a fun one. It will be a fun one, Johnny, to watch. These two, they've already been on the podium several times. A young team, Marta and Kitja, 19 and 20 years old.
Yeah, the Italians across the board have been sliding very well this season, and their women's doubles are definitely a product of that. Again, a little farther back on that start than you'd like. This is a bit of a shorter track. I mean, only 42 seconds for the downtime, about 10 or 11 curves. So being that far back, it's not necessarily a long enough track where you can really make that up. Until a little rough when a big skid there.
Oh no, this is really one of the first major problems they've had this year for a team that's been in the top 5 in all but one race. The other result is 7th. They get it together pretty quickly, though, They lost all their speed, didn't they?
Yeah, 2 seconds back after that. Just little offline in that 9, 10 into 11. And when they got onto that first part 11, they just had a big skid going down. Nowhere to go but back up on the end, and that's why they hit out of that curve. And after that, just hitting and trying to survive and do the best you can to minimize. You can tell all the way up top there. And it's so hard to regain that, especially on a double sled. They did a good job of keeping it steels down, but it's kind of the best you can hope for at that situation.
They're ranked number 4 in the World Cup standings, actually still a distant 70 points behind the Americans in the points. So they're not going to make any move this weekend unless they really put it together and run number 2. The World Championship bid at least for one more weekend. But one thing for sure, these are the World Cup leaders in dominating fashion. Zelina Egla, Laura Kipp of Austria. They've won 5 of 6 races, the last 5 in a row. They're giving up a little bit to the Italians at the start, but this is when we start seeing red turn to green, at least the last month or so for these two.
Yeah, this is the one sled where I feel my saying you need a good start in order to be fast here might be wrong. They seem to make up so much time, as all these Austrian sleds do. You can tell only 500 back after being over a 10th on the start. Coming out of there, you can just tell the speed that they're carrying through all these curves.
Not only have they won 5 races in a row, they've won just about every one of their World Cup heats. I believe 12 of the 14 individual runs they've been the winner of. And what is it in your mind, Johnny? I mean, we've seen it from Jonas, from Nico, from Madeline, from Lisa. All of these Austrian sleds down at the bottom half of the track are just opening it up as if they're shifting into a 5th gear.
They are, for sure. I mean, what we can talk about as well is how well Selena and Laura slide. They look very good on the sled. Every time something goes a little bit wrong, you can tell the end of that curve 13 wanted to throw them to the right, and they're able to minimize things so quickly. That, along with good sleds, sliding well, it's everything adds up for them.
Nothing but smiles so far this season for the Austrians. They lead over Italy and Germany as we take a look at the second of the 2 Latvian teams, Anda Upait, Zana Kaluma. They're currently in 6th place in the World Cup standings, 1 podium early in the season in Innsbruck.
Yeah, it's really, I feel these top 6 or 7 sleds like to trade the podiums around, mostly that 2nd and 3rd place as everyone's trying to chase Laura and Kipp, or Egel and Kipp.
2 former singles athletes, as so many of these women doubles athletes are, but both of these were sliding on the World Cup singles as recently as last season. Now, as Johnny alluded to, kind of honing their skills, try to make an Olympic team. Only 11 spots available in women's doubles next year for Cortina. That's going to be competitive.
It's going to be competitive, and it's going to be a fight between the nations as well, as each nation only gets 1 women's double sled. So fighting everyone else on the circuit and fighting your own team, it's a lot.
Which stop this season would you say has had the largest, most enthusiastic group of spectators, luge fans? Last week?
Last week it was pretty good out in Winterberg. I think Oberhof might challenge what we've had this season. I mean, even now compared to 20 minutes ago, I'm looking out at the crowd at the finish. You can see more and more people trickling in. I think by the time the women's race comes up next, we're going to have a pretty decent crowd.
A tradition here in Oberhof, the athletes giving the fist bumps to the spectators who are lining that outrun right behind the Latvians right there. Now the second of 2 from the United States, Siobhan Forgan, Sophie Kirkby, 4 podiums this year, a first, a second, and a pair of 3rd place finishes, including one of those bronze medals here in the opening race in Oberhof last month. They're 3rd in the World Cup standings, 49 points behind the German team of Degenhardt and Rosenthal. They're fast here at the start.
They are. They put in the work over the summer with their technique, with lifting, with training. They hold many start records all around. I know they want to probably take this one as well, so we're going to see them trying for it. A little behind that start record that was set today. But in addition to that, they have come a long way on the sled. That's a bit late into curve 8 there. It's going to cost them some time and some speed. But they have trained very well on the sled. Siobhan used to be known for kind of looking a little bit similar to how Luca does, but she has really put in the effort to push back. You can see coming out of this curve 13, a little farther back than they would like, but their lines have been looking pretty good in their position as well.
I was going to say fighting for a top 3 down there at the bottom, and they're just outside right now in 4th place with one other contending team getting ready at the top. So it will be no worse than top 5 for Forgan and Kirkby, could be as high as 4th at the end of run number 1.
Yeah, I think for some athletes, a top 5 would be, you know, feeling pretty good after the first run, but for a team that's on the podium just about every weekend, we know they're looking up. There's the crowd there, really happy to be out there.
Yeah, you have to have a contest of who has the best brat alongside with a contest of who the fastest sled is.
Shevtsov always smiling after the runs, really showing out that they're happy to be here and they're sliding well.
Now the final German team, Jessica Degenhardt, Cheyenne Rosenthal, 2nd place in 6 of the 7 races this season, as they have yet to extend their lead. By the way, all time here in the 4th season of World Cup Luge. These two still lead the way with 12 career victories, 1 up on Egla and Kip. So they're a little bit extra hungry this weekend for victory number 1.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be hard-pressed to defend that. It's a very decent start, only about 100th off that start record that was just set today. So definitely a good base to have, but as we know, the Ego Kip just slides so well, and their sleds run so well down to the bottom part of the track. You can tell they're holding a little bit.
5,000ths of a second.
Just slowly turning. There's that red right there. Holding
Jessica
it very close, though.
Yeah, Jessica doing a great piece of driving between 13 and 14. So 3rd place. This is going to be a fun race for the podium, Johnny. Everyone else is pretty well behind, but Egla Kip, Vetter Oberhofer, Degenhardt Rosenthal, world champions and World Cup overall winners, all of them. And only 500 separate the top 3 positions in the standings.
Yeah, nice and close in that top 3, and I think that we can tell from the sleds who are a little behind them, any little mistake is costing so much on this track right now. These top 3 have had very good runs, have looked good, really pushing the position, getting nice and early into this Kreis over here. You can tell a little bit too soon, but brings it back over. It was a very good run from these two.
Jessica from the Altenburg region, the red light. This is the first time I've seen it, at least on camera. Johnny, explain quickly what that means.
Yeah, the red light means you're in the technical control, so you have to go in the back. They get your weight, get the weight of all your equipment, check out your sled, make sure there's nothing illegal going on.
So as you see, 500 separating the top 3. The top 5 are all within 0.4 of a second, and then the rest of these athletes will be just trying to posture to move up a spot or 2 in run number 2. Putting you on the spot here, Johnny. What's going to happen? Can anyone stop these Austrians?
I think there is a chance for sure. You can tell their start's a little bit slower. Those that are close to them have very fast starts. I think with maybe slightly better runs, pushing back just a little bit more, really putting that position and putting that head back, I definitely think there's a chance.
Will the Austrians win for the 6th week in a row? Will Degenhardt and Rosenthal finally break to the top of the podium, or will one of the nations upset the rest of them? We'll find out all of that when we return in about a half hour. Johnny and I will be back for run number 2 here in Oberhof.